Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It's been 10 years since the release, and it's finally time that we answer the question, how good were the ORAS titles actually? Hear me out, I always see my childhood / teenagehood Pokemon experiences through rose-tinted goggles. That mixed with the nostalgia factor of Gen 3 being my first ever games mean that I wasn't actually playing them through an objective set of eyes. Today, however, I'm gonna correct that for science. I'm gonna be 100%ing ORAS, i.e. doing absolutely everything I can do, completing a living dex, or at least as much of one as I can with the 3DS servers being wiped from existence, all the way down to even taking on the 200 consecutive battles at the battle resort just to obtain a freaking Starfberry. Yeah, when I say we're doing it all, we're doing it all. Just to come to an objective conclusion, were these games as good as I remember them to be, or was I clouded by my nostalgia-driven need to love them? Let's jump in and find that out. Off the rip, it's not even fair because this game instantly feeds into my nostalgia by showing me the original opening Birch scene. And right, pause here for just a second, because two things. One, my protagonist is playing Pokemon in a game of Pokemon, and I'm honestly not sure if that's cool or weird. And two, I don't believe I've ever seen that console in my entire life. Has this guy got the new Switch? After using the video game in the video game to determine my gender, I leapt out of the truck that I've been stuffed into the back of to my house where some hunky, mostly naked Pokemen are helping my mum with the big move. Another note, by the way, see that truck that I leapt out of? It genuinely took up like a fifth of the surface area of this town itself. So, it's a cozy place to say the very least. Anyway, to avoid dwelling too much, I went downstairs, missed my absent father on TV, and ran out to the only other house in this place. I met a stay-at-home mum and went upstairs unannounced directly into a girl's bedroom with no door to even knock. She says some things, we leave the house, and in heading north to go square up to some wild animals without any of my own, the region's leading professor was being hounded down by a pooch. So naturally, I rummaged through his briefcase, stole an axolotl, and sent Poochyena back to whence it came. The prof asked me to follow him to his lab where he gave me the axolotl to keep. We have now officially dented our Pokédex work. Sick! I went straight back to my house to tell mum that I'm moving out of the house that we moved into about 8 minutes ago, and then I pressed on to the first route to train my little guy before heading off to smack up an entire region of strangers. Cool, so in the next town, I got given some potions, did a little more training, went north to fight our self-proclaimed rival, and after wiping the floor with her, I had to trek all the way back to the lab to accept the professor's hand-me-down pipe dream of catching them all. Mum comes and says her goodbyes, and I ran on forth, and it was time to get into the meat and potatoes. On the route directly above Little Root, I caught myself Zigzagoon, Wurmple, and Poochyena respectively. Here's the issue with that though. I went to the Pokemart to get my hands on some balls, but they were a little too expensive for this financially independent 10-year-old's bank account. So I bought a few, went west and took on youngster Calvin, beat up his raccoon dog, and ran around until I found myself a Seedot. I beat up literally everyone on the route, and in trying to progress, May and I shared a moment with a pretty sunset and some butterflies. Onwards, comrades, to Petalburg, where I bumped into Father Dearest. We go into his gym, talk about my hopes and dreams, and some random socially anxious green-haired guy comes through. And apparently I need to mentor him in catching his first Pokemon, which ends up being a Rouse, which I need for my dex. Whatever, I'll find another one. Dad told me to leave westward to find a gym leader called Roxanne to start on my legacy as the world's greatest trainer. But first, get this right, I was adamant to find a Rouse on my own, so I ran around for upwards of 30 minutes trying to find the Pokemon that Wally ran into without even trying. And after literally 30 minutes, I gave up because the damn thing was elusive as hell. My brain was starting to melt on stream, so reluctantly, I pressed on. In the next route, I grabbed myself a very handsome young Talo and pressed on forth to clobber this kid called Winston, whose wallet that I stole contained a whole 960 Pokebucks. That's almost 5 Pokeballs. Hell yeah. Now, before you say it, I know that I'm missing a few Pokemon here and there, but I was prioritizing the main storyline over dex work since I knew I was gonna have to come back to it anyway. It's more just a catching what shows up until I get bored type of thing for now. In Petalburg Woods, I beat up a kid and ran around in pursuit of a sentient cocoon. I caught it and then found one of my favorite, nay, objectively one of the best Pokemon to come from this region. Nay, to come from this whole franchise! Shroomish. If you disagree, screw you, you're wrong, and you've lost my respect and my friendship. Pressing on though, I found a nerd being harassed by a guy in red pajamas, so I thought the guy killed his dog, stole his wallet, and in return for saving him, the scientist guy handed me an XP share, which is just lovely. We made our way out of the forest, and the camera pans to another onesie-repping person lurking in the shadows. She comes into someone called Courtney and tells her that they failed their mission, whatever that might have been. Then on the other side of the forest, I beat up a whole plethora of weenies before arriving, finally, at Rustboro City. May was awaiting our arrival, we stare up at the sky, reflect on how far we've come, and part ways. I will say, I like these little moments that they've added. Already we can tell it's not a carbon remake of the first Hoenn installments. Anyway, before taking on the gym, I made my way to the next route, beat up a kid, and caught myself a Whismur and a Nincada? Before sequentially beating up everyone else in my way. From here, I went back to the city and entered Roxanne's gym, where unlike the old game, she's kind enough to greet us on entry. She walks back, takes her place on her podium, and the gym challenge is up. I fought the first kid, but then opted to take the easy route, mainly because I was hungry, and so I dodged the rest of the trainers, and without hesitation, challenged Roxanne for our first badge. I will add, by the way, the 3D touch to the battle introduction introduction was just delicious. It really teased up the battle as a big deal. I'm excited. Although in saying that, our mushroom made quick work of her Geodude, and her nose pass again honestly just didn't stand a chance. We took our prize money and more importantly our badge, and with that I left the gymnasium to find another pajama cultist running away from the nerd we saved earlier. So I took chase and apparently they just run off with some important parts. For what? I don't know, but it seems malicious. I don't know the full story here, but you seem pretty harmless, so I've got you, mate. Okay, cool. On my way I saw Skitty's tail poke out from the grass and I hadn't caught one yet, so I opted to stop off and catch it and make my way east towards a cave, where an old guy outside exclaims someone stole his beloved Pokemon. So I guess we're out here saving everyone today. Listen, I fought another cultist who apparently doesn't have an identity beyond grunt, but whatever. I KO'd their doggy, and with that they returned the Devon parts and the Wingull that they'd stolen for whatever reason from this poor old fella. So from there I went back again to Rustboro, and inside some lavish looking building I was escorted to the president of the Devon Corporation, who gives me even more unpaid labour to do. I'm just putting out fires for every stranger out on these streets, huh? Cool, so routing back through Petalburg Woods, I could call in a favour with that old guy from earlier, who just so happens to be a man of the sea. With his very lovely little boat, he escorted me over to a new town called Dewford. What an adorable place. However, I spared no time to take it in though, because we've got business to conduct. First things first, I talked to some guy who gave me his rod, and I used that rod to fish up some fish. Revolutionary, I know. Amongst those fish were Magikarp and Tentacool, so I guess a fish and a squid. I made my way to the cave that lies on the west side of town, and in there we caught ourselves a Makuhita, a second Makuhita to evolve later, and our adorable Mudkip evolved into what I can only describe as the atomic manifestation of insomnia. This Pokemon looks like it lives off a strict diet of cigarettes and Prime. Anyway, I was gonna try and make my way deeper into the cave, but then the entrance was being blocked by 3 tourists, so to pass the time until they leave, I opted to make my way to the gym and take on the trainers. The first one had an onion monkey, the second had a malnourished child, and the third had an onion monkey and a malnourished child. Then I found myself at the gym leader, who was just sort of skiing in spot. I took him on and used my Tailo to knock out his malnourished child, and Mr. Brawley brought in a dumpling, who just got demolished by my Tailo. And that, my friends, is a quarter of our gym badges down already. I'm telling you, we're making good pace. Things are gonna get much stickier and much slower later though, so I'm gonna cherish it while it lasts. So right, off to that cave, and hey, what impeccable timing with my new badge. Those tourists aren't blocking the entrance anymore. So I made my way in, and as stoic as ever stood Mr. Stephen Stone. Objectively, the sexiest man in the universe. Anyway, he was admiring an ancient mural of some even more ancient Pokemon, but I couldn't hear him over my incessant and intrusive urge to propose to him on the spot. But I kept my cool, and instead gave him the letter that the guy back in Rustboro asked me to deliver. So cool, with another job done, I left the cave and went to call in yet another favour from Mr. Briny. This time, it was off to a new dock near Slateport to do some more underage unpaid labour. My favourite. Yum yum yum. But first I decided to take a little break and head to Route 110, where I can do a little more dex work. I caught a sentient Pokeball. My little Seedot from earlier evolved into the very Pokemon that the Nuzlocke challenge was named after. So now we're in the presence of both royalty and the only Pokemon to have nipples, unless of course you count others as nipples. And I then went on to catch a good boy, a baby turnip, and a seagull. Then I made my way back into Slateport in pursuit of a Captain Stern, who didn't seem to be present at his place of work, so I went to check the museum. I had to pay $50 to even get in, and the place was infested with that pesky red pajama cult. However, upstairs I did manage to find Stern, who was also being pursued by the Grunties. Unfortunately for them, I had Zui the Marstomp to put them in their place, before a very terrifying looking man approached us. He looked like he's never seen the sun, or a vitamin of any variety for that matter. He exclaims that his name is Maxie, and that he wants to get rid of the sea. Just, yep, let's get rid of all of the water. That's exactly what we need, isn't it? Anyway, since I apprehended his lackeys, they all left, and Stern safely walked away as well. My job here was done, but as I was going to leave, people started flocking around this anime girl and her cloud dragon. Something about contests and stuff, but in all honesty, that's something that I'm leaving till later. So I left Slateport, and after beating up a few trainers, I decided to stop yet again and catch myself a Minun before taking on May in another rival battle. Swiftly, my bipedal Axolotl killed her Magma Slug, my common Swallow killed her Lizard, and my Mushroom killed her baby whale, who by the way has the nicest set of teeth of any Pokemon I've ever seen in my entire life. This guy knows how to floss. Cool, so I fought a guy, caught a penis joke, fought someone else, picked up some leper berries since we're shooting to get ourselves every berry that we can, and trust me when I say that's actually going to be one of the toughest parts of this whole thing. But we'll get to that. For now, I entered the gates of Mauville City, and upon entry, I saw a domestic dispute between a kid that we helped back in Petalburg and his dad. They were arguing about his future as a Pokemon trainer, and so to prove a point, he wanted to challenge me to a battle. I would have let him win, but I just saw red, so I mean, oops, I guess. The man thanked me for clobbering his son, and he gave me Rock Smash. Since we couldn't actually use the hidden machine until we fight the next gym, it felt only natural to head there next. Inside Mr. Watson's gym, I used my Nightmare Fuel to pretty much wipe the floor with every single person in in the place before finally finding myself face to face with the most adorable gym leader across the board. This man brings me so much happiness, I want to adopt him. Anyway, I used my Insomniac to throw mud at Watson's entire team until they all inevitably fell, and that was incredibly straightforward. So listen, we're officially 3 gyms in, which I think is a good place to evaluate. So far I've had a fantastic experience for a plethora of reasons. Hoenn in 3D is just awesome. This place is stunning, so seeing it in all of its glory with all the textures and colours etc. is just awesome. It feels like its own game. Of course it follows in the same storyline as the original Gen 3 titles, but it has its own flavour. From the cutscenes down to the range of emotion and livelihood from characters we only ever saw in 8-bit form really make this game a genuinely immersive and new feeling experience. To also allude into Primal Reversion in what Steven's researching and to introduce Mega Evolution in this place make for a fresh twist on what we already know and love. I wholeheartedly believe that I could play Pokemon Ruby and then leap into Omega Ruby straight after and not feel like it's too similar at all. So right, Dimensionals and me are best friends now because they're the ones sponsoring this 100% run. I am so excited to say that the game is finally actually out. It came out on November 18th, but listen, play at your own risk. This game is so addictive. It's a roguelike RPG, so it's a familiar yet unique approach to turn-based combat gameplay. The heroes are genuinely awesome and colourful and creative. The boss fights are intense and vigorous and fervent and synonyms. The comic book inspired cutscenes and battle styles are just incredible. And there's so much thought and strategy behind the fights, since all enemies have their own unique attack patterns, meaning that you can't just throw random abilities at your enemies, you actually have to put conscious effort into your tactics. I'm telling you, right, if you like Pokemon, which you do, I know you do, you'll like this. There is RNG involved, which is cool because when you get it and it aligns in your favour, it feels good to get off some of the game's combos. And listen, if you're new to the game, I advise you to play the campaign mode where you get handed a curated set of heroes and skills to ease you into the experience. However, if you're a roguelike veteran, I absolutely recommend Master Raid mode, but I'm not quite there yet. Give it a shot for yourself and please let me know what you think. Use the link in my description and I promise you will not regret it. Moving on from there, it's time to press forth, and in using Rock Smash to smash a rock, I could encounter the best Pokemon to ever graze this franchise, and I caught myself a Geodude. Something to note here though is that Geodude is inevitably a trade Evo, so I won't ever be able to get my hands on a Golem since the great Thanosing of the 3DS servers. Regardless, I kept pressing on, and in the grass on route, I caught a lava camo and a malnourished child before pressing on to beat up a hiker and enter a cave to, you guessed it, catch some Pokemon. First of which was a Coughing and then a Slugma. Then I tracked back a smidge to pick up some more berries and ran to Route 111, fought a kid and met a super shady guy who told me about secret bases, and he gave me the TM for secret power. As a kid, by the way, and I cannot be the only one, I would make a sick base, set up shop, leave to progress the story, and never find my base literally ever again. I was so good at hiding it that it would literally elude me for the remainder of time. Progressing on our journey with 3 badges and 47 Pokemon in my Pokédex, I picked up some Nanab and Rost berries before progressing west to Route 113, where May was waiting to heal my Pokemon. She says some stuff that I wasn't listening to, and I started making my rounds. I caught a Spinda and my Mushroom tried to evolve, but I'm not letting it. Not yet. You'll see why soon enough, but for now, I'm not letting Shroomish grow limbs. Not on my watch. So I beat up a kid, my turnip evolved into a slightly grosser, slightly bigger one, and I caught a Sandshrew. I beat up another kid and stopped my Mushroom from growing up again. I found and caught a Skarmory and picked up the TM for Double Team, which, again, a hugely tedious part of what constitutes a 100% run is picking up all TMs. Dumb, right? I know, but if I don't do it, the comments will get mad at me, and I'm a chronic people pleaser, so I'm doing it. Anyway, I found myself in Fall Arbor Town, where May introduced me to some lady who tells me that a Professor Cosmo has been abducted by some shady pajama cultists. So the to-do list just got bigger. I ran on, got the TM for Roar from a gentleman, and on Route 114, I caught a Swablu, then after running around for a bit and finding nothing, I kept moving. I fought some guy dressed as a dinosaur, and then finally found a Surskit to add to our ever-expanding Pokédex. In pressing on, I saw May shouting off screen to the Professor's captors, and so after fighting my way through some strangers, I found myself in Meteor Falls. Of course, before helping out the prof, I had to stop off and catch a Zubat, and before I knew it, May and I were facing off against a Magma admin and their sidekick. They had a Mightyena, a Coughing, and a Numel, so it's pretty fair to say that they didn't pose much of a threat. They started divulging their plans, but we were soon interrupted by a big, handsome, wham, beardy man called Archie. The Professor was too in shock to speak, so we just sort of walked him back to his place, and in return he gave to me what I gave the baddies. Smackdown. Get it? Because I smacked them down. That was comedy. You all laughed, don't I? By the way, in watching this back, I realised that I messed up because I completely skipped past the win straight challenge. See that house over there? The one just past Mauville? Well, there's a family that live there, and they love to battle. It's all consecutive, but just know that had I remembered their existence, I would have wiped the floor with them. Cool, so now we can actually use the gondola that sits atop Route 112, and that'll take us to a whole new place. I got in and embraced the scenery on my ascent of Mount Chimney. At the top, a bunch of the red guys were fighting a bunch of the blue guys, and for some reason they all had the same single Pokemon. What are the chances? It's a pretty sucky Pokemon as well, to be honest. Like, if you're gonna take over the world, why not choose something a little bit more powerful, you know? Anyway, I made my way forth and fought a few myself before before confronting Tabitha at the base of the summit. Although she still only has her coughing and a nummel, so I smacked her up and stood by a machine on a completely unsupported platform made of exclusively glass about 4 meters above an active volcano. And standing with me was Maxie. I guess just listen, don't question it. I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer it. Physics don't make sense in this universe. We should be dead right now. He says some super shady things, and now I'm forced into battle with a man thrice my age. He has a formidable team of Mighty Enna, Camerupt, and Golbat, and after besting him in combat, our freaking mushroom tried to evolve again. Unsuccessfully. Maximus gives me a meteorite and walks off. Archie comes up to me and gets angry at something. I find a hidden TM for Incinerate, pretty aptly placed next to running lava, and I pressed south to a route where I caught Spoink. I tracked back to Mauville after that to get my hands on a bike, and then to Lavaridge Town. I made my way into the gymnasium, and with great prowess and skill, I bested the gym puzzle and eventually found myself in the center with Flannery. My future ex-wife, of course. She shouts a lot of things at me, but I couldn't hear past her red hot eyes. Anyway, I killed her slug, then her camel, and then her turtle, and she couldn't help but write her number on the back of my 4th badge. She also gave me the TM for Overheat, which is subliminal, emphasizing her feelings for me. But I've got a mission to complete here, sweet cheeks. I'll be back for you in time. Straight out the gym, May gave me the go-go goggles. Go goggles? Go goggles. I'm bad at this. And she asked if I want to join her back to Petalburg, because the next gym on our conquest list is none other than Mr. Dad, the big boss. So after making my way very swiftly through his dojo and the kids that he actually does spend time with, I could finally take on Papa Dearest. But instead of doing that, I decided to return to the elusive hunt for a Rouse. That thing caused me problems the first time. And guess what? This was no different. I ran around for freaking ages, but eventually I did manage to find it. So now I feel that I'm officially ready. I beat up the rest of Dad's favorites in a fit of misdirected rage, and finally it was Gym 5. I did something pretty evil as well. I evolved the Nincada, and if you know why, you'll know that I'm officially a scumbag. Father! The gloves are off. Let's do it. Dad has a pretty busted team as well. His Uncle Monkey goes hard, but after KOing it, he has a Brother Monkey, and then finally another freaking Uncle Monkey. But after managing to take it out second try with my super hodgepodge team, we left the gym together. And this is officially the longest time I've ever spent with my dad in one sitting. Wally was outside and gave me the HM for Surf, and we embarked back to Mauville together. Then from there, I could head east to a new area. I taught Surf to my nightmare fuel and pressed on across a pond where my future ex-wife's replacement was waiting. And as soon as he came to chat, we were interrupted by a sentient aeroplane. It picked up me and Steven, flew us around, and took us to a genuinely stunning little area. What a cool place. I made my way through, and awaiting us at the end was another plane. Stood there, very enigmatic. And who else but Magma to come ruin our day? So Courtney and Grunt versus me and Mr. Stone. We wiped the floor with our opponents, and our freaking mushroom tried to evolve again! Latios was so impressed at my battling prowess and good deeds that it decided that it wanted to join the cause. Then Steven gave me a freaking mega bracelet, so now we're officially in business. Latias barked at me since I stole its sibling, and it was time to continue my journey. I caught a line in on my travels, and after traversing through flooring a bunch of trainers, I found myself at another building completely infested with pajama gangsters. And so, after windmill punching my way through, I came face to face with freaking Tabitha again. We have beef. Let's quash it. Tabitha's Numo evolved into a Camerupt, but she benched the coffin that she used to run. So, I mean, Zui surfed once, the volcano camel died, and Morgan tried to freaking evolve again. How many times do I have to tell you? They never learn. Some guy thanked me for saving them from the Magma baddies, and he told me all about Primal Groudon. From there, I had to quickly put a Pokemon in the box so that the guy could give me a cast form. One of the Pokemon of all time. It's a ball with balls. I decided to explore a little, and in doing so, I actually stumbled upon a leaf stone, and funnily enough, I could throw it at my nipple guy, and he could become a Shiftry. Sick. Moving on, May stopped me before I could really make any more progress, and she decided it was time to fight. Luckily for me though, she's leading a lava slug, and it's raining, so Surf OHKO'd, and then I brought in a Ninjask against Grovyle, and a few leech lives did the trick. Lastly, her Wilmer got clobbered by my fresh and cool new tree demon. She gave me some cash, the HM for Fly, and left. I found some Pomeg berries and landed in a lovely place called Fortree City. I made my way through, and off to the east of the village was a route, and on that route was none other than Mr. Steven Stone. He gave me an Oculus Rift, and I got jump scared by a chameleon. I'd be more freaked out if I didn't have to catch it, so I did just that. Steven gave me not only the device itself, but a Swampert, the very item needed to turn my Axolotl into the Hulk. Well, once it evolved. For now though, I made my way into the 6th gymnasium and defeated all the trainers, and interestingly, Marshtomp evolved on the way to our next conquest, Winona. The cutscene here is just freaking awesome, specifically fitting for the flying gym leader. I don't know man, things like this really help the game feel fresh. Winnie's team consists of Swellow, Altaria, Skarmory, and Pelipper, which I think is awesome. She's got Dragon, Steel, and Water to back up her primary type. Frickin' Morrigan tried to evolve again, and I was bestowed with the Feather Badge and the TM for Roost. On the next route, I snagged an Azu, and then I grabbed some Persimberries, some Aspirs, and some Rosts, and made my way through to Lily Cove City. I went to the east side of the city where the Team Magma hideout was, but they were blocking the entrance. So I left to the Safari Zone and caught a Pelipper, 2 Doduos, a Wobbuffet, a Rhyhorn, and then I flew back to Mauville to swap my bike for the other bike, before heading back and grabbing the Absolite. I found and caught Heracross, Pikachu, and Psyduck, and then on the route outside of the Safari Zone, I caught a Shuppet before finally making my way to Mount Pyre. There, I beat up a bunch of people and caught a Duskull and a Meditite before making my way up the mountain to fight off some cultists. once. My Numble evolved into a Camerupt, and at the summit, who else but Maxie? He stole the red orb, then my guy threw some lore at me, then spurred out his master plan before ordering his lackey to fight me. She had a singular Camerupt, so, Swampert. She ran off and left atop the mount of the blue orb. And with that in pocket, I left Mount Pyre back towards Slateport, where we joined a crowd of people surrounding the dock. Captain Stern was apparently doing an interview for TV, and a voice from inside said something evil, and so we ran in to interrupt Maxie and Tabitha just a smidge too late. They make their escape in a submarine and left me to take on a couple of grunts. I floored both, and Stern asks me to take chase back to their base of operations in Lily Cove. I made my way to the Magma hideout, and after throwing fists all the way through a plethora of grunts, mixed with a healthy dose of getting embarrassingly lost, catching an electrode, picking up the master ball, and get this, my mushroom wanted to evolve yet again, but this time I let it. See, there was actually a method behind this madness. Shroomish at level 40 learns a move called Spore, a move that guarantees to put a Pokemon to sleep because it's 100% accurate. Beyond that, Breloom learns False Swipe, so our Pokedex work was about to become levels easier. Anyway, I walked up to Courtney, who revealed a super cool Camerupt themed sub, which I personally think's very cool, and I guess she's paying homage to it because, yet again, her only Pokemon is a Camerupt. This cult worships camels. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, in battle, she'd stopped me for long enough for the sub to get away, and so I ran off, this time to the not yet explored Moss Deep City. I figured while I'm here to stop off and take on the gym, so after making my way through a genuinely very cool puzzle, I used Shiftry's Leaf Blade to kill the Lunatone pretty swiftly, followed by the Solrock. With those being the twins' only Pokemon, I emerged victorious, mind badge in hand. However, in leaving the gym, a big green pillar of light exploded out from the sea, and Stephen invited me into his house. We conducted some business back and forth about the current state of affairs, and we concluded that we must do something to help. He gave me the HM for dive and some scuba diving gear, and so in teaching dive to my Swampert, I took my leave and headed to, well, the middle of the ocean, I guess, where I just so happened to find that camel sub. In the cave just beyond, I caught a Graveler and a Golbat before navigating the cave puzzle like the tall, smart, handsome, humble, sexy, buff, incredible trainer that I am. I then found myself in the middle of a domestic between a very insanity-driven, vitamin-deficient, red-haired albino man and Archie, and I guess he didn't like that I was here because instead of taking on his sworn rival, he opted to fight me. According to the battlefield, I can only assume that we've been transported and we're now fighting on the surface of the sun, so the fact that we're still alive is interesting. Regardless of that little visual inconsistency, I wiped the floor with Maxie and his honestly pretty cool team of Mightyena, Weezing, Crobat, and you guessed it, Camerupt. To spite him, I brought in my Camerupt, but Max terrestrializes and somehow still loses to mine. That's just embarrassing. Snapping back to reality, Tabitha came through and actually explained to Maxie that, hey, maybe unleashing an ancient deity upon the region might not be a 10 out of 10 idea. You know, maybe we need water. Or maybe, just maybe, the demigod might not answer to your beck and call. You know, just a thought. He doesn't care and revives Groudon using the red orb anyway. The beast snaps out of its cocoon, emerges into the middle of the sea, summons the blazing sun, and walks towards Sutopolis. So I guess that's where we're headed next, huh? We're cut to Maxie realizing that he's made a silly mistake because it's a billion degrees and we're all literally getting cooked. And then Mr. Steven swoops in and says that we're all gonna die and then flies off to Sutopolis as well. I navigated my way there totally without the help of chat and 13 minutes of the stream, cough cough, and I caught up with Steven and a new guy who introduces himself as Wallace. We convene with Maxie, Archie, and Tabitha, and it seems that the collective decision is that I'm the expendable one out of the crew. He gave me a little send-off, and in the cave, and then at the bottom of the cave, I put on something called a Magma suit, and the orb that I have apparently pleased the big dog, and so now I'm literally riding Groudon as it womp stomps its way to another room where there seems to be an incredible build-up of energy. Groudon cocoons into a big omega crystal thing and emerges in its true and primal form, so now we're fighting. I decided to use Swampert to mud slap a bunch, and then eventually I managed to catch Primal Groudon without using my Master Ball. A cutscene reveals the cave collapsing in on itself. I ran away, a massive energy build-up from Sutopolis exploded into the sky, destroying the desolating sun. So we saved the day and little adorable flakes of gamma radiation feathered down from the sky, reducing all of our lifespans significantly. And they all lived happily ever after for 3 to 5 years less than they were supposed to. On exit, Stephen gave me one final gift in the Eon Flute. He parted and May said something wholesome and cute before also walking off to live her life. Finally, Sutopolis Gym. I actually love these types of puzzles, and me being the humongous, soft, wet brain wielding trainer that I am, cleared it first try. Except from the fact that I lied. I misclicked, so I had to embarrassingly fight all the trainers on the underside of the gym. However, I did clear it, and once I did, I was faced with Wallace for my 8th and final gym badge. For whatever reason, our man led a love disc. His team of that, Milotic, Celio, Whiskash, and Seaking was alright, but not alright enough. I messed them up, took my rain badge, and left. Onwards though, we may be nearing the end of the main story, but we're nowhere near done with the content. First and foremost, I went back to Route 111, and in the desert I snagged a Trapinch, picked up the Claw Fossil, and then I tracked back to Mauville where Mr. Watson was waiting for me in the square. I then had to meet him in his apartment where he had a favour to ask me. I need to surf from Route 110 to find new Mauville and turn on some power generator for him, so I guess I'm off on a side quest now. I found the place, and inside I found an Ampharocyte, and I caught a Magnemite. Once that was through, I got a little distracted, and in flying around with Latios, I got lost and accidentally found a place called Nameless Cavern, where I stumbled, again, very accidentally, across a freaking gaping glowing hole in the universe, which just so happened to contain a Mesprit, which I also caught. Apparently, I also found a place called Mirage Mountain where I caught a Xatu, a Porygon, and a Munna, and then I left off and used Waterfall to make my way towards Evergrande City, which is literally just a patch of grass and a Pokemon Center. Cool, so in Victory Road I caught a Loudred, fought some people, caught a Hairy Mama and a Medicham, fought some more people, grabbed Psychic, caught a Lairon, grabbed Flamethrower, fought some more people, Magnemite evolved, I got X-Scissor, then before leaving the place, Wally was awaiting my arrival to battle. He had a team of Altaria, Roselia, Delcatty, Magneton, and a freaking Mega Gallade. It didn't pose a crazy threat, and so at the gates of the Elite Four, I found a Mewtwo Knight Y, I healed up my team and prepped to take on our final conquest of the base game. So I did my prep, and with that, I parted the trainers blocking the entrance and made my way in. And great googly moogly, look at this place. Everything about it's just awesome. The atmosphere is undeniable. Tension is palpable, and I am immersed. When I approached the first of the Elite Four strongholds, the sand sensed my presence, and in turn, sand filled the environment. The lights came on, and the door mysteriously opened up for me. I entered the fortress, and on the other side, Mr. Sydney was posted up, looking cool as hell. His team was pretty cool as well. He had a Mightyena, Absol, Shiftry, a Sharpedo that doesn't Mega Evolve, and a Cacturn. Very cool team all in all, but it didn't faze me. Moving forwards, upwards, and onwards towards the second stronghold. I'm telling you, man, this atmosphere is nuts. I love these designs. The flower arch, the lotus flowers, then the ghostly wisps all lighting the lanterns leading up to the door creaking open. Can we just compare this to the Scarlet and Violet Elite Four? That place looks like the inside of a PC box, and that is not a compliment. Back to this game, however. Phoebe, the coolest part of this entire game in my eyes. There is an actual ghost in this room. Look carefully behind Phoebe on the chair. Future ex-wife material, bro. Are you serious? Wow. Where's the ghost? There she was! Did you see her? I saw her. And then it goes to her perspective. This is the perspective of the ghost, bro. Oh, it's terrifying. Crazy. She's creeping up. She's behind you. Oh, no, wait, she's behind me. Do you see her? There's literally a girl standing behind my character right now. She's just there. Look at the flat. Oh my god, Phoebe. If Phoebe was real, I swear, that's not even future ex-wife material. That's just future wife material. Anyway, Phoebe's had a team of Clops, Dusk Noir, Sableye, not Mega, Bayonet, not Mega, and another Bayonet, still not Mega. Our Hulk KO'd them, and my god, I want to marry Phoebe on the spot. If the price of that is being haunted for the rest of my life, so be it. Wow. Things are getting icy now, and interestingly, a lot of people think icy is the easiest word to spell, and come to think of it, I see why. Glacia has a Glalie, still not Mega, a Frostlass, another Frostlass, a Walrein, and another not Mega Glalie. It's super interesting that each Elite Four member so far has had a Pokemon capable of Mega Evolution, and yet nobody Mega Evolves. Finally, things are getting spicy. An animation awakens the dragon on the entrance of the final Elite Four room, and on entry, Mr. Drake was awaiting my arrival. Sick guy, sick room, sick team, sick battle. He has an Altaria, a Salamence, a Flygon again, and lastly, a Kingdra. In leaving Drake's lair, there's nothing but a door that extends as high as the heavens, and in walking through it, a darkened room. And a Steven. This is it, my champion battle. He has a formidable team of Skarmory, Cradily, Aggron, Armaldo, and Mega Metagross. And that thing tore me up. But my tree demon was able to prevail. And with that, the champion title was mine. May and Bert showed up to extend their congratulations, and Steven and I entered my 6 into the official Hoenn Hall of Fame. May said something wholesome, blushed, and we made our way back to Littleroot together over the credits of the game. Awesome stuff. The base game might be over, but we are far from done. So hopping back in with the champ title secured, and brought back to the Moss Deep Space Center Celestial Observatory, where apparently there's a disaster afoot. There's a meteorite headed directly for our planet, and the scientists are all in disarray and panic. We're then cut over to someone in a Magma outfit, but they changed their clothes, and Awuga, well, I mean, as Awuga as a chibi gets, Awuga-ish, is Zinnia. If you've seen her in anime form, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, she talks about her plan, swears to protect Aster, and the Delta episode title drops. Awesome. Cut to my house, where Papa gave me tickets to some event happening in the region since he hasn't got time for his marriage, so I guess I'm taking them. I left my house, and right outside was Zinnia. Did I manifest her here or something? Regardless, she tells me she knows who I am and talks briefly about how nice Littleroot is, and then she leaves. From there, I frankly had absolutely no idea where I was going, so in just sort of assuming that it's Moss Deep per the intro scene, I made my way there to the Space Center, but I wasn't yet allowed to go upstairs. Eventually, I tracked back, spoke to May, and from there I was being told to head to Petalburg. So I went, and at Wally's house, I found him being harassed by Magma admin Courtney. Lo and behold, she wields nothing but a camel, so I killed it, and Wally tells me the keystone she was after was gone. So apparently I need to meet Steven back at the Devon Corporation in Rustboro now. I head there in quite a rush, and in the president's office, Steven and his father told tale of 3,000 years ago, and a war that went down. A powerful weapon that drained the life of Pokemon as its source of power. He then went on to tell me about the significance of the meteorite and how his company have been working with the scientists at Moss Deep Space Center to try and combat the issue, and how he's gonna need my help. I flew to Dewford at the ask of President Stone, since there's a meteorite shard in Granite Cave that's required for their plan. But when I arrived, I found Zinnia there, admiring the ancient mural showing off Primal Reversion. She asked me to battle, and after doing the creepiest dance I've ever seen, she sent out her team team of Tyrantrum, Altaria, and Salamence. Big on dragons, I see. Anyway, after beating her, she gave me the meteorite shard I was here looking for, but before leaving, she stared me in my soul and said something super profound, and I was inches from leaning in for a kiss. She left and so did I. Back towards Moss Deep so that I can meet all the scientists and drop off the shard they were looking for. Professor Cosmo showed us all the charts and graphs and told me of their plan to redirect the meteor. The issue is, they wouldn't know exactly where the meteor would be redirected to. Xenia showed up and talked of the human technology ruining everything. She warned that they're about to make a huge mistake, tells them all off, and her Whismer took their leave. The professor exclaims that the next piece of the puzzle resides at Meteor Falls, so presumably that's where we're headed to next. When I got there, I ran around for a second and caught a soul rock, and in exploring farther up the cave, I bumped into Steven, who seems to be mid-conversation with an elderly lady who tells us of Lord Rayquaza, and of a person who the Draconoids, an ancient people who descend from or worship dragons or something, gets designated as the Lore Keeper. A profound title bestowed upon someone special, and who might that be in our time? Well, Xenia, of course. I found the Aerodactylite and took my leave since Steven found what we were here for anyway. Back at the Space Center, they exclaimed that Steven brought them the meteorite shard so I could leave back to Rustboro, where I'm struck by deja vu in the form of a Magma goon harassing the professor from the beginning of our journey. I smacked him up and another one came out of the Devon building. I beat him up and another guy came out. It's a revolving door of Pokemon trainers. That seemed to be the end of our weird interaction, and the guy tells me to immediately make my way back over to Moss Deep. Team Magma seemed to have taken over the place, and in a fit of rage, I used my Swampert to knock out all of their dogs. And in heading upstairs, Courtney and Steven were having a willy swinging contest, and apparently now I'm a part of it. We wiped the floor with her and another nameless grunt before we were interrupted by Xenia's Whismer, who stole the final machine part from Courtney, who stole it originally. This is hard to follow. And Xenia, sticking to her guns and not wanting to divert the meteor just to wipe out another planet, crushed the final part of the machine in her hands, meaning that we were left with no option but to put our faith in her. Or at least that's what I'm doing. She's that confident that there's a better way, and I don't know, man, it rubs off. I backed this girl. I made my way to the Magma hideout, and after getting profoundly lost, I found Xenia conversing with Maxie deep in the lair. Xenia stole his keystone off his face and exclaims that she hopes to see me at Sky Pillar, where she's headed. So we make our way over to Zootopolis, where Wallace has information for me about Sky Pillar and about Rayquaza. He told me where to go in pursuit of Sky Pillar, and so I set off yet again to Pacific Log this time, where I found the Kangaskhanite. I can't say that. Then I surfed east towards a cave. Waiting there for me was none other than Wallace, who insisted that we battle first. I floored his Wailord, followed swiftly by his Ludicolo, Milotic, Tentacruel, Gyarados, and Whiscash, and upon beating him, he grants me access to the cave leading to Sky Pillar, where I meet up with Xenia again. She calls me a good boy, and then the Lore Keeper tells me the lore behind the power of Primal Groudon and Kyogre, and how Razquaza quelled their frenzy. She told me the story in segments as we ascended the Great Pillar. I found the TM for Explosion while I was at it, and atop Sky Pillar, in the dead of night, Xenia and Little Aster comment on the show that's about to start. Xenia says she's gonna summon Rayquaza itself, and then says that she wants to be with her Aster again, so I guess Whismer was named after someone else. She speaks in ancient riddle and summons Rayquaza upon us, and sure as anything, Ray answers her call. Xenia wishes Mega Evolution upon Quaz, but the stone doesn't react. She's just about to admit defeat when the meteorite in my bag starts glowing and growing stronger in Rayquaza's presence. Quaza literally swallows it, and all of a sudden, I was presented the opportunity to fight. I lost the first time because I was adamant to catch it without the Master Ball, but in Fight 2 we crit it. However, the phrase third time lucky rings true, and I catch the Sky Noodle in an Ultra Ball. With Ray by my side, it's time to prove my worthiness. Xenia forced me into battle one final time, and on entry, Quaza Mega evolves, and with Mega Ray on the field, we KO'd Zinnipuu's whole team. And following the battle, I put on a spacesuit, mount Sky Noodle, and dart vertically off to the vast and beautiful emptiness of space. In one of the coolest cutscenes in all of Pokemon history, we shoot towards the meteor like a bullet, and with Ray's sheer power and velocity, we break straight through, shattering the meteor. Out from the center reveals a triangle, or a delta symbol if you want to be technical, and out from it slithered the unmistakable arms of Deoxys. Too bad for the alien, I still had my Master Ball. You're going straight in my basket. We cut to the scientists in Moss Deep, who are over the moon since, you know, we're not gonna die anymore. We see Wally standing up for himself, Courtney apologizing for going behind Maxie's back, and a wholesome moment where Tabitha, Max, and Courtney all vow to do better in this world. Then we see Wallace and Steven talking about his dreams to travel. We see Xenia and the Draconoid Elder, and they talk of Xenia's mission finally coming to an end. Father, Birch, Mother, and May's mum are all at our place. We see our parents cook together, and finally we're cut to May and I at Moss Deep Space Center, on a bench looking out of the view. And with that, my friends, it's back to Little Root. May and I part ways, our parents' voices welcome us home, and the Delta episode is over. But yet again, we're not done! Okay, so now for the nitty gritty. Dad gave me an SS ticket, and instantly on leaving Little Root, the professor is being chased down by a mushroom. This guy's clueless. Anyway, in his briefcase, we're given the option to take one of the Gen 2 starters. I choose Chikorita, naturally, then make my way back home. Then in leaving my house, the professor's being chased down by a honky Pokemon. And hey, this time I can take a Gen 5 starter. I choose Tepig, and so now we can actually go off and do things. First on my checklist was the Mega Stones. In Meteor Falls, I could speak with the Draconoid from earlier, and to thank me for helping Xenia save the world, we get the Salamence. Using the SS ticket, I went to Slateport and boarded the ship heading to the Battle Resort. Off the boat, I met with Wally. We see Archie and his friends, and they give us the Sharpedo Knight. Then farther on the island, we find a house containing containing the Gengarite. Then, randomly, we find Mr. Looker washed up on the beach, and he has no clue where he is. A cutie comes out of nowhere and takes him in. They walk off screen, and we never hear from him again. Until that is, I go to the cutie's house, because even though Looker has no idea what his purpose for being here is, he thanks us for finding him and hands us the Odinite. From there, I made my way to see Mauville, where we find a shipwreck that, looking back, might explain why Mr. Looker was washed up in the first place. I explored a little and realized that this is where I catch Spiritomb. But the Spiritomb used Memento and fell asleep pretty swiftly and permanently. We'll still be able to catch it, just not right now. So I explored some more in a wild goose chase to find every room's specific key. And once I acquired all of them and made my way through the rooms until eventually I found the storage key, which I used to get into the storage room, which contained a bunch of stuff, but mainly the Beedrillite and the TM for Ice Beam. All the other items were nuggets and big nuggets, and they will come in ludicrously handy for something we're gonna have to do a little later, so just remember that. There's a reason I opted to do these parts in this order. Back in Mauville, I went up to the apartments where some guy seems to owe someone money, and it dawned on me that I forgot to come back to Watson after the whole new Mauville excursion. I talked to him, grabbed the TM for Thunderbolt, and the scary dude from before handed me the Lopunite. In Moss Deep, I went to Steven's home and found a Beldum. Then in Surfing North, I found a cave, caught Celio and a Spheal. I solved the puzzle of ice, picked up Hail, and finally found the Glailitite. Before leaving to Route 123 to snag the Aboma site. In Rustarf Tunnel, I reunited two estranged lovers, and in return, the Taekwondo man gave me the Agronite. Back on the SS Tidal, I found the Blastoisinite. Then on Route 114, there's an old guy who sells stones. I managed to get the Blazikenite and the Sceptilite off him. Then it was off to Fiery Path where I could get the Charizardite X. In Verdanturf, some gal gave me the Gardevoirite. Then outside, once I found a girl's Shroomish for her, she gives me an intriguing stone, which turns out to be a Pidgeotite when I get it examined at the Devon Corp. Back in Granite Cave, I caught an Aron, picked up Shadow Claw and a Steelixite, then I left. At Shoal Cave, I had to grab some shoal salt when the tide was low, which is a time-dependent endeavor. I then waited for the tide to rise before re-entering the cave to grab some shoal shells. I handed them to a lonesome old man, and he gave me the Slowbronite in exchange. Next, I went to the Scorched Slab and got my hands on the Charizardite Y. I was gifted the HM cut, gave a puppy some scritches at a fishing shop, and in return, it gave me Gyarados' Megastone. The Heracronite was on a small beach on Route 127. I found the Houndoomite in Lava Ridge, Manectite on the big cycling road, Mawilite laid on the west side of Route 117. At the top of Mount Pyre, I could grab the Medichamite, and the Mewtwo X was hidden in a little corner of Littleroot. I had to dive to get to a hidden part of Route 124 where I found the Pinsirite. Sizzle's Megastone was back in Petalburg Woods, Tyranitar's was somewhere along the Jagged Pass, and finally I completed our collection with the Venusaurite under the Restoring House in Route 119. Gosh, that was tedious. Honestly, I was kind of bored walking around and collecting things, so instead I decided to do this O-Powers mission. I honestly couldn't even tell you what O-Powers are, so I guess let's go find out. In the Poké Center in Mauville, there was a yellow hair-ished man named Gibby. He asked me a bunch of ludicrous questions like, what's the bottom of the sea like? Oh no, mate, wet, I guess. And in return for me listening to him babble on, he gave me the O-Power for speed. When I came back to the Poké Center, I did the same thing again, but Gibby gave me the critical O-Power this time. I then left and re-entered again, and there was another identical man standing in Gibby's place. Except this man's almost hair was red. This guy gave me the O-Power for befriending Pokemon. I kept repeating the cycle, getting a different color-haired Gibby guy every time, until eventually I got all of the O-Powers, triggering the Mr. Bonding side quest. For some of you, that name might ring a bell. That's right, this is the same Mr. Bonding from X and Y that gives you all the O-Powers. Except this is kind of his origin story, I guess. You see, all the different colored O-Power Masters seem to need help. In order for them to unite and harness their powers into one, and yes, that is exactly as strange as it sounds, they required a man worth nothing, so they can take over his body to become the ultimate O-Power wielder. Luckily, there was an apartment directly opposite where apparently a powerless man lives. How convenient. I decided this hopeless man would make for a viable candidate, so I took him from his home entirely against his will and brought him to the multicolored balding men. They danced around him, taking turns literally entering the man. They took turns, yes, merging with the powerless man, creating, inevitably, Mr. Bonding. Sick. I'm so unfathomably confused, but sick. With all the O-Powers now in my possession, I decided to stay put and beat all levels of the food court battle. Another thing that we have to complete if we're 100%ing this. This one was incredibly interesting, very yummy, and very cool. In this style of battle, you order food, and depending on what you order, you have a set amount of turns that you must conclude a battle in. That means that if you're given 8 turns, you can fight as many people as you like, but the 8th collective turn needs to be the final blow to one of your enemy's last Pokemon. I know it sounds hard, but it's harder than it sounds. You literally have to complete one of your battles on exactly the 8th turn. And some of these Pokemon were running Protect, which meant the Pokemon could just Protect on the 8th turn, making you start all over again just out of spite. Ludicrous. After completing all 3 levels of the food court battles, I wanted a change. I haven't quite quenched my hunger for proper Pokemon battles, not turn-specific ones, but some real battles, street style. So I made my way to the Pokemon League, where I decided to re-challenge the Elite Four. Honestly, I have to give it to Game Freak for this one. Usually rematching the Elite Four doesn't involve a whole lot of changes, but every single member has a much better team, and they all had 6 Pokemon. I mean, just look at Drake's team. What the hell are you even supposed to do against that? Once I beat the champion in a rematch, I landed back in Littleroot. When I headed north to Route 1, I actually had to save Professor Muttonchops from one of his many admirers. There he lets you pick a Sinnoh starter, and since I can't steal all 3, I chose chose Turtwig, the undisputed best Gen 4 starter. No question, no debate, just facts. I decided to make my way to Route 110 where the Trick House resides. And although this isn't at all crucial to the story, it's a pretty fun set of puzzles. In it, you need to use a different HM in every room, and you receive a prize for every puzzle you do. Some of the prizes for completing the floor were pretty underwhelming, but it's important to take note that we did get the TM for Taunt on the first level and Trick Room on the third. Next, I set my sights to Wally. I wanted a rematch, but before I emotionally scar a child, there was something I had to do first. You see, in order to rematch Wally, you need to win 20 consecutive battles of your choice at the Battle Mansion, and then you have to win 50 super battles in a row, 70 in total. Rough, but in this game you can do it in a double battle format where you can choose a teammate from either Wally, May, Steven, Archie, or Maxie, depending on your version of the game, of course. After Wally helped me take down the Battle Mansion's Chatelaine, a trophy was placed in my honor at the entrance of the Battle Mansion, and I challenged Wally to my now well-earned rematch. Wally's team consisted of Altaria, Delcatty, Roserade, Magnezone, and a Mega Gallade. Not bad, but not incredible either. However, our rivalry didn't end there. I just wanted to do a few more things before battling him again. Next on the list, legendaries. This is a doozy since a lot of the legendaries have very specific times of the day and week that you can catch them. Some require you to have certain Pokemon in your party, but others were a lot easier. Heatran, for example, easy. You can find him just chilling at the bottom of the Scotch slab. But then next I went to Slateport where I handed in a scanner I picked up earlier in the game in exchange for the clear bell to catch Ho-Oh. Raikou, Entei, and Suicune are all found at a mirage spot called Trackless Forest near Rustboro. Raikou will be there in the first 20 minutes of the hour, Entei from 21 to 40 minutes past the hour, and Suicune in the last 20 minutes. For the next set of legendaries, I needed very specific Pokemon in my party, being a Relicanth and a Wailord. The interesting thing here is that Relicanth has to be at the front of your party, and Wailord, who I evolved from Wilmer, needs to be at the very back. What reason is there for this, you ask? Yes. Anyway, I made my way to Route 133 where I dove underwater to get to the secret chamber. There, I read some braille on a wall, dug through it, read some more illegible scripture, allowing me to actually begin hunting the Regis. Regice's cave was on Route 105 where I had to read some scripture, literally stand still for 2 full minutes and make my way in. For Regirock, I read the scripture in his cave on Route 111, took 2 steps to the right, then 2 steps down, used strength, and voila. For Registeel's cave on Route 120, you need to read the scripture, go to the exact middle of the cave, and use fly. If you thought that wasn't complicated enough, to be able to get Regigigas, I had to go to the name rater to give Regice a nickname. Then I have to give it an ice-related item, and then Regigigas will just sort of show up in the same cave you found Regice. But only between 10 AM and 6 PM. Game Freak really wanted us to suffer with that one, huh? I put Castform in my party to make some Weather Storms appear above Hoenn in order to catch the weather legendaries. I caught the Justice Trio at the Mirage Spot Pathless Plain, Reshiram was at the Fabled Cave, and Curem at the Gnarled Den. Finally, for the Guardians of the Lake, they just didn't want to show up. I waited for the exact right date and time, but nothing. That obviously then had a knock-on effect since you need to have the trio in hand to catch the rest of the Gen 4 legendaries. So listen, I'm counting it. I don't know if earlier when I caught Mesprit I messed up, but it sure as heck seems like it. With the legendaries out the way, it was time to round out the remaining TMs. Look, I could go into detail here about how and where I got them all, but for your and my sanity, I'll save you the bore and skip over this bit, straight over to the contest segment. Just know, I literally went around the map and picked up every single TM. Regardless, moving on, I need to get Master Rank status for all 5 competitions. Toughness, coolness, beauty, cuteness, and cleverness. To do this, I went to the contest hall to get my hands on Cosplay Pikachu. I went around getting every berry available to me at this point, and after planting and replanting a bunch, I used them all to make Pokeblocks. With these, I was able to max all of Pikachu's competition attributes. And with that, we were able to get the ribbon for every single competition, and an additional one for completing them all at a Master Rank. So with the contest ribbons in hand, it feels only right that we go out and grab whatever ribbons we have left to tie that part of the run up. Much like a ribbon. I went to the Slateport Market and got my hands on the Effort ribbon. Before I could grab the next one, I ran into a forbidden love scene between Team Aqua and Team Magma. These two grunts were clearly trying to overcome their differences, accepting any punishment that might come their way. It's pretty cute. All of a sudden though, they were caught by their co-workers, and after some discussion, they decided that it wasn't worth leaving their respective tribes. They called it there, and the forbidden love was broken. Ignoring that series of completely random events, I got back on track and showed this random man one of my Pokemon. He checked their affection, and I was granted the footprint ribbon. Next, I made my way to Mauville, where I would get my hands on a lot of the ribbons. Firstly, I went to get the ones that you can purchase at the store, and one of the ribbons, by the way, was $1 million freaking Pokédollars for a ribbon to put on my Pokemon. I thought the prices for olive oil were criminal. This is straight up felony. Arrest this woman. Although remember when I said all those nuggets would come in handy? Well, this is why. On the second floor, there's a girl who gives you a different ribbon dispensing on each day of the week. I also had to max out the affection on one of my Pokemon to get the best friend ribbon from some girl. After a quick assessment, I realized that I only needed 2 more ribbons to complete my collection. The Skillful Battler ribbon and the Expert Battler ribbon. To get those, I needed to beat one of the heads of the Battle Maison in both a regular and a super battle. In my head, too easy, and I wasn't gonna stop there. I decided to defeat the head of the Battle Maison for every single form of battle, getting 5 different trophies erected directed on my behalf, so with that complete, I could finally take a break from all the tedious stuff, and rematch Wally. This time his team was competitively viable. All of his mons had held items and they had brilliant movesets. I love that even when the game is technically over, it still just keeps getting harder. So much to do, so much to see. This game is filling a hole I didn't even know that I had, and don't you type anything right now. I know how it sounds. After battling Wally's pretty badass team, I came to a pretty sad realization. All that I had left was to complete the living dex and get my hands on the final 2 berries needed to complete my collection. My 100% experience was almost coming to an end. I'll say it, this forced me to explore corners of Hoenn I never knew were there, secrets I didn't know about, and I really got to experience the depth and love that were through into these games. I don't think I'm just saying this because Hoenn's where I started, but I'm gonna say this game is one of, if not my absolute favourite Pokemon game. What an experience, genuinely.